Hello and welcome to the next episode in my tutorial series, Keyboard and Theory Basics on Synthesizers. So far we've talked a bit about what we're trying to achieve in this series. We've talked about the names of the notes on the keyboard and how they relate to the musical staff. We've talked about intervals, what I call generic intervals and specific intervals. We've talked about musical time and time subdivisions. And we've experimented by improvising using only one note. Now the question you might ask is, what was the significance of the one note that we used? Well, what we're going to discuss in this context is what is called the concept of a key or a scale. So a key or a scale is a set of notes which are considered to be harmonically and melodically compatible. Predominantly, we will be talking about traditional Western 7-note scales. The most famous of these scales, most likely, is the C major scale as it's known. C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. Many piano beginner has spent their time doing this. But the question is, what makes it a C scale? Why is it called a C major scale? And what is the significance of C? So let me talk about what the root of a scale is. The root of a scale is the note from which the scale is constructed by creating intervals. And in a musical context, the root is what is considered home for that scale. So in other words, in any part of a song in a certain key, that one note should sound at home. Other notes in the scale will sound more or less harmonically and melodically compatible depending on the context, but that one note, the root note, is home, and typically melodic lines will be excursions from the root note and back to the root note, or excursions starting away from the root note and making their way to the root note. So the root note can be thought of as the strongest note in the scale, and we'll come back to the concept of strength in a scale in future. Let's take that C major scale and look at what notes it's built up of. It's built up of C, D, E, F, G, A, B. Okay, so let's talk about the specific intervals here. Well, C, if C is my root note, then C is my 1. The generic interval between C and C is 1, and the specific interval would usually be called a perfect 1. D. So what is the interval? Well, firstly, D is 2 semitones or a whole tone or a whole step above the root note. So you could say that the second note is a whole step up. The way that we refer to this in the specific interval terms, we would call this a major second. So we have the 1 or the perfect 1. We have the 2, sometimes known as the major 2. What's next? Well, the next one is 2 semitones up, or a whole step, and this is commonly called a major 3. Now the next one, notice, that's 2 notes. There's only 1 note up to the rest, to the next note in the scale here. This is an interesting thing because this is only a semitone, so we could say we went up a whole tone, and then a semitone. This note is commonly called the perfect 4 of the scale. Go up a whole tone, the next one is usually called the perfect 5. Go up another whole tone, this is usually called the major 6. Go up another whole tone, the major 7, and finally a half tone or a half step up to the octave, which is the C. So we're back to the beginning. So the names of the notes in musical terms, sometimes they would be called perfect 1, major 2, major 3, perfect 4, perfect 5, major 6, major 7, and sometimes just 8 or perfect 8. They may also just be called the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, or they may be referred to just by their notes, C, D, E, F, G, A, B. But that pattern, whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half, that pattern of selecting notes to make a major scale can be done on any root note. So let's try starting on D. A whole step takes me to E. A whole step takes me to F sharp. So we've done whole, whole, now half. Half step takes me to G. Whole step takes me to A. Whole step takes me to B. Whole step takes me to C sharp. Half step takes me to D. So listen to the scale. Let me start playing it here. And let me play the C major. So what you will hopefully hear is the spacings between the notes are the same. Now in practice, when playing these scales, we don't tend to simply look at the intervals and count the number of notes chromatically. If I needed to know, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, so 9 chromatic steps up from the root is my major 6th. So on the D, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So my B is my major 6th in that scale. It would be tremendously inconvenient to work like that, and nobody does. And what actually happens is, to represent the notes that are used in a given scale, we tend to use a thing called a key signature. Now, a key signature is something that gets written on sheet music, but it's very useful for thinking about the notes that are used within a scale. I will come back to talking about a thing called the circle of fifths, which will explain why this works, but there is a specific order in which sharps or flats occur. Specifically, if a scale has sharps, when it only has one sharp, remember this D scale, D, E, F sharp, G, A, B, C sharp, D. It had 2 sharps. The 2 sharps it had were F sharp and C. If a scale has 2 sharps, it will have those sharps. If it has 3 sharps, another one will appear. If it has 4, it will add another one. If it has 5, it will add another one. If it has 6, it will add another. If it has 7, it will add another. So there is a fixed pattern by which the sharps occur. Similarly, there is a fixed pattern by which the flats occur. So the pattern is this. F, C, G, D, A, E, B. Okay, so that is actually ascending in fifths. That's what the circle of fifths is. So if we have 1 sharp, it is only an F sharp. If the scale has 2 sharps, it has an F sharp and a C sharp. 3 sharps, we add a G sharp. 4 sharps, we add a D sharp. 5 sharps, we add an A sharp. 6 sharps, we add an E sharp. 7 sharps, we add a B sharp. So remember I said that each scale will only have one instance of any given note, and that note will either be the natural, the sharp, or the flat. So when I talk about D, D has D natural, E natural, F sharp, G natural, A natural, B natural, C sharp. Those are the notes in that scale. And when you remember the order in which these occur, it's possible for you to also remember how many sharps and flats each scale has. This is something that I'm not going to go into detail on. There are plenty of resources to look this up. But my recommendation is simply to get familiar with what it feels like to play in each of these keys. So for example, okay, so that was G major and A major. These things, once you get them at your fingertips, remember that I said when playing rhythm, you get to feel the rhythm, you feel the groove. When you're playing on the keyboard, you don't intellectually think about which notes there are. You get a feel for which notes are in your scale and which ones aren't. So just by way of demonstration, I'll try and play a quick improvisation in C major, being the most straightforward and accessible key on a piano keyboard. So very dull playing, very basic C major, but hopefully you could see that I used all of the keys in the scale. You may have also noticed that certain notes I used more often than others. Some of them were just passing notes as accents, some of them I sat on them for longer. And I'm going to come back to this, and I'm going to talk about notes which are harmonically strong in the context of a key and harmonically weak in the context of a key. So I think that is it for this episode. Hopefully this has been instructive and it's given you a little feel for not exactly the notes in every key, but what a key is, why a scale is important, what the root of that key is, and potentially how you can play those notes together in different rhythms to form a melody. I hope you've been enjoying the series. I hope you'll join me for some more episodes in this series, but in any case, thank you and goodbye.